Hi, everybody, and welcome to Cultivating Business. I'm Kevin McLaughlin, Managing Director with Centri Consulting, where I lead our cannabis practice. Very excited for our guest today. He's respected within the cannabis community as not only an attorney, but also an entrepreneur. Our guest today is founding partner of RCCB, Roger Braunfeld. Roger, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. This is great.
Yep, absolutely. Looking forward to our conversation. And I always like to start off with getting a little bit of background on our guests. How they got into cannabis and really how they fit into the industry. So why don't we start there?
Well, we can talk about how I got into cannabis over drinks later, but I'm one of four founders of a law firm. We've been around for 10 years. We're essentially a full service business centric firm. And we have 65 attorneys and growing. It's been an exciting ride. Got into cannabis. I myself am a corporate securities attorney. We have a large trust and estates group, and in addition to a large transactional group. And when cannabis especially started coming to the East Coast, people, the high net worth, to get licenses, high net worth people used to have to flash their balance sheet. Or they cut deals so that they can show that when people went for licenses, they need the financial wherewithal. A lot of law firms, and this is I guess it's around 2013-ish time, a lot of law firms weren't in this space. And candidly, there was a lot of really poor legal work. So our clients would be the high net worth people that would flash their balance sheet. But when we look at it, there was a lot of cleanup to be done in that. And so that's really how we first started getting into the cannabis space. And then me in particular started getting a lot of representations in the space that would use all our different services. And one of my clients was a very successful investor in the space. And in 2018, he came to me and was like, what do you think about us going after the space and raising some money and putting our own money into it? And that turned into over $150 million of cannabis investments. So in addition to our main businesses being a law firm, we've gotten involved and partnered with people when it comes to capitalizing certain businesses. So we are entrepreneurial that way. But right now, our most exciting business in the space, believe it or not, is the legal. Thank God we've actually made money for investors, because I know there's a lot of people who haven't. There's a lot, but I do feel we bring a unique perspective, cannabis regulatory, full service, but also know what it's like to invest, know what it's like to make money, and know what it's like to lose money. But I don't want to talk about any of my mistakes, because I want everyone in this program to like me.
I'm sure that wouldn't be a problem. Everyone will love you, but it's good insight, right? You're able to have that legal side, but also have the vision on the other side of the table, which I think is a great perspective, especially in this industry, right? From the investor end, where it's been challenging to say the least. I know that you've been involved in the beverage segment of cannabis, and that has its own challenges, right? Some of it's dependent on the state level and what the rec program looks like. But where do you see the future of cannabis beverages, as you look forward here in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years?
So the timing is everything, but I love the cannabis beverage space. There's a lot of challenges to being in it. People in it know it. But when I look at the cannabis, I actually just think of it very simply. It's a hot day. You're sitting on a beach. You're at a club. You're with friends. You can have a great tasting beverage that makes you feel how you feel, or you can feel very comfortable being social with people. Have no calories, 15 calories, and not be hungover and feel like crap the next day. That to me was like ding-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling in my ears. And I think people aren't used to eating, let alone smoking or vaping cannabis, but having a beverage when other people are having alcohol, it just seems like a natural way to go. And I see brands being built. I see a lot of opportunities in the cannabis beverage space. Now, the timing when that will happen, I don't know. But it's something that it's an area where I'm personally very interested in the cannabis space, in addition to being a lawyer, but looking for opportunities in
Yeah,
this
absolutely. I
space.
think to your point, it's if there's a scenario where you could get some type of cannabis beverage in the same way you could get, a bottle of rosé or something like that, it's an alternative to your point that I think folks would certainly be interested in. There's a market for that. So more of a long-term play there, but interested to see how that plays out long term.
The problem is there's a huge amount of CapEx needed to get into the beverage space, and we all know the funding issues in the space. So create some challenges.
Yeah, one more challenge to add to the list here for folks in the industry.
Challenges are opportunities, though. It's just a question of when is it worth going for it.
Absolutely. Shifting a little bit here to another challenge. So we've seen the impact of the illicit markets have had in California, other states, and now even in the early days of New York going rec, you're already hearing about the illicit market and how that's going to impact it. What can really be done to regulate it, to monitor it, to prevent it from being one of these huge challenges for license holders in markets that presumably have a lot of opportunity? I know this is a difficult question, but I think something that's really at the forefront right now when you look at New York and some of the challenges they have with the illicit market.
I'm going to come up with a very biased lawyer answer. I actually think, and you ask people internationally who are not lawyers, what is one of the biggest advantages to doing business in the United States, which actually we have rule of law. Not that I'm not commenting on if our laws are good or not. We have rule of law. So there's so much business uncertainty out there. At least you know what the law is. And if someone wrongs you, there's a process that is fair. I'm sure people would have comments on that, but relative to whatever, to hold people accountable. Problem with what's been going on both, like it's great for a law firm because every state, every municipality has its own tweak, but all that uncertainty creates friction to getting in the industry. And then on top of that, they do have laws, but you don't have law if there is no law if you can't enforce the law. An example of that is of one of my good friends and clients bought a building in Costa Rica. They have great laws for it, but it takes you 7 years to get into court there. Maybe that's different now. So as far as I'm concerned, they have no laws. So guess what? It doesn't facilitate capital. It doesn't facilitate trust. To me, it also devalues the licenses and the people it creates a huge incentive for people to not follow the law. Because what's the point in paying more money if there's no benefit you get? You're not creating any value to your asset. So I think the complexity of the legal regime across the country, based on the uncertainty in every state, that's a problem for the industry. But I also think that these states and the federal government at some point, they have to enforce the law. Now, obviously, right now, we don't want the federal government to enforce the existing law, and they make it clear, but they're creating a lot more uncertainty and candidly letting criminals that are bad people take advantage of the situation.
No, it's a fair point. Good way to look at it. And it obviously,
I mean, to be blunt, like I love investing and doing things in the cannabis space. I feel no urgency to do anything. And I want to do stuff in the space outside of being just a lawyer, but they're just, until the states and the federal government start showing that they're going to let cannabis companies make money, what's the point of investing?
Right. I mean, you're going into a tough situation off the bat, right? And that leads to my next thing. I think the biggest thing holding back the cannabis industry is 280E, right? Like, how can these businesses be profitable when they're paying taxes in excess of 70-80%, and then that kind of stems to all the other challenges, right? Raising capital, all the things, banking, et cetera. But folks aren't going to jump in if there's really not a path to profitability because of the 280E. And I know that there's really not anything immediate here, but I think there's ever any changes to 280E like prior to federal legalization, because I think that's down the line. But any type of reform that would impact 280E? Because that's really the driver.
I don't see anything. I see potential structures that are legitimate to, or like are perceived to be legitimate, like to kind of structure around 280. No one wants to be the first one to use those structures, but I see that that's gonna, I don't see, I see that happening before federal legalization. Unless a safe banking act of sort, which I don't even see any like momentum for this year. They wanted to include that, but I've given up trying to predict when they're going to do these things.
Yeah, it's impossible at this point. I think it's like you look back a couple of years ago, you thought we'd be further along at this point. So it's better off not to play the guessing game. But I'll end with this. It's one thing that kind of is, I guess, a prediction. I'm not going to hold you to this, but I do always like to get people's thoughts just because of where the current environment is, the industry is.
You can hold me to it. We'll see if I'm
I'll
right.
hold you to it. All right, I'll hold you to it for a beer or something. But you got a prediction for cannabis in 2023? Anything? I mean, everything you hear is, kind of hum ho. But any predictions for the industry in 2023?
I think this is the year where people are going to have to find a way to be profitable, and based on the current dynamics of the regime right now. I don't think there's going to be federal legalization or safe banking act this year. I hope I'm wrong, by the way, and everyone in the world can tell you I told you we're wrong. Like when everyone was excited in December, I had I thought way, I do think these businesses are going to have to figure out how to be profitable. And you're going to see, so people survive. Like if I have if I have a business that's in cannabis, I survive. I try not to raise capital. I try to get through this year. And I think there are going to be a number of companies that are able to kind of figure that out. That's my prediction. There's going to be real discipline. They have no choice but to have discipline now. So
yeah, it's almost survival of the fittest, kind of clawing through this time. And if you're there standing, there'll be some opportunities. Not the brightest, but it's the reality right now.
There will be. I mean, the thing is that's crazy is more people are using it every day in the United States. So and they're like, it should be doing better. And the government could collect a lot of tax revenues in a way, and if they enforce the law, so the illegal stuff didn't, they like it just I think old agendas are playing out here. And this will eventually be figured through, but now's a tough time.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. I mean, politics is playing into it, but they're looking for revenue. There's the whole industry there. They can bring in a little bit more on that end. But
I also feel like we're missing the boat because we're so ahead of the rest of the world. But since we're not getting this together, this is the medical technology. Like, there's so many places where this can be used. Creating brands, other countries another place in the world can catch up, where we could own this market. Like it's kind of frustrating, to tell you the truth.
That's a great point, because it's like Europe could kind of jump in and be the leader if just based off of how we've kind of stumbled here, trying to get it through some of the obstacles. So that's a fair point, from a global perspective, that we're hindering our chance to be the leader, so to speak, from a cannabis industry standpoint. But well, I appreciate the time, as always, Roger. Great insights. Love chatting with you.
Awesome.
So thanks for joining, and thanks everybody, all our guests here, and look forward to seeing everybody in March for our next episode of Cultivating Business.
Kevin, thanks for having me. You guys rock.
Thanks, Roger.